Hello, and welcome to drillingcontractor.org. I'm Kelly Ainsworth here at the 2016 IADC Advanced Rig Technology Conference in Galveston, Texas. Earlier this morning, David Kaplan of NASA Safety Organization explained how NASA has used probabilistic risk assessment and what the drilling industry can learn from this. How are you doing today, David?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you, Kelly.
What are some similarities between the International Space Station and a drilling rig?
Well, it might not be obvious on first thought, but when you consider that the International Space Station operates in an extremely hostile environment, completely remote from resource resupply, it operates an extremely complex engineering marvel. You begin to see the similarities with offshore deep water rig operations. On the International Space Station, we have to choreograph very carefully the arrival of crews and the arrival of supplies. We have to take into account the extreme environment and the fact that one failure, either in hardware or in human reliability, can absolutely lead to a catastrophic event. In those ways, it's very similar to offshore deep water operations.
And how has NASA used qualitative risk assessment techniques, and what can the oil and gas industry learn from this?
The oil and gas industry has done an outstanding job of risk management using techniques that I would call qualitative. Bow tie charts, barrier analyses, many of the standards that the industry has pushed to a great deal of sophistication. And frankly, NASA has also used those kinds of approaches. We would call them fault trees or failure analyses. But we have discovered that certain critical events that we would call low probability, high consequence events are not easy to detect using these kinds of approaches. So NASA has followed on with technologies and techniques first developed by the nuclear power industry of quantifying risk, and the technique we use is probabilistic risk assessment, or PRA in our jargon. And NASA's experience is that this approach allows you to account for human reliability and a common cause or systemic failure of components in a far deeper sense with more acute understanding than other techniques. And we feel that we can look at one-of-a-kind major engineering structures like an International Space Station or potentially a deep water offshore rig and identify where those low probability events are starting to build, leading to a higher risk than had otherwise been appreciated, to which, of course, you would now intervene and try and mitigate the terribly high consequent event that could be catastrophic.
What insight can PRAs give both NASA and the drilling industry into how human performance can contribute to failures?
In a PRA, we treat the human being in a very similar way as we would treat a piece of hardware. So, for example, a pump could fail to turn on when you've instructed to turn it off. It could fail to turn off when you've instructed to turn it on. Or it could turn on and not fully function at the capacity you expect. Similarly, a human being could push the right button at the right time, or could push the wrong button at the right time, or could fail to push the right button within the time limit that has been provided, or any number of other failures. Well, we treat each one of those options in a very detailed matrix, a detailed logic matrix, and can follow the effects of each possible action that a human being would have as we would a piece of hardware. And by applying quantitative reliability assessments to how that human behaves, we can account for that admittedly low probability event when a highly trained individual is either distracted or in some ways makes a wrong decision, and wrong in this case being not doing in the time frame required the correct action, how that would ripple through the system and what other events would have to occur to lead to that highly undesirable consequence of perhaps the loss of containment of hydrocarbons or, worst case, loss of life.
Well, thank you for joining us today, David, and giving us some insight into how the industry could use PRAs.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for joining us on drillingcontractor.org.